In this tutorial I want to look at the Transform CV tool here on the control panel. And I'll start by comparing it with how we've worked up to now, which is just to use Pick CV and then move, rotate or scale, either from the palette or from the marking menus. And I'll use this rear wheel arch as the first example. So I'll turn off the surfaces that I'm not using, and then you can see this template surface which is from Mike's concept design. And what I've started to do is build more precise curves for building the final quality data. So true arcs and aiming for G3 continuity. So I'll start at this end, and you can see that my curves are flat to begin with, so I just need to start tucking it in here. So I can just use the normal Pick CV tool and then the normal Move tool. And this lower curve is aligned so it'll update. Now the only problem with the normal Move tool is that my mouse movements are a bit too coarse, and I don't really have fine control when I'm trying to smooth out this cone plot, for example. So that's why we use the Transform CV tool. And if I double click on it, then I've got the options. So I can pick hulls or individual CVs, but not objects, because it only works on control points. And I've got the standard transform tools. But most of us don't use this option window. Instead, we hold down the spacebar to get this hotbox. So again, you've got the move, rotate, scale and non-p-scale and set pivot. And here's Pick CV and Pick Hull in the center. And then we have the transform modes, which I'll cover later. So for now, I'll stick with the standard XYZ. And here I can fix that jumpiness of the mouse movements with the mouse sensitivity. So I can just change the slider, or I can go to a preset. So I'll try it at 10 first, which is 10 times as sensitive. And now as I move my mouse, each movement has less effect. So let's try 50. And now it's really letting me fine-tune that shape by making my CV movements very small. Now there's some more work needed on those curves, but I'm not going to spend time on that now. Instead, I want to take a look at the other end. And here the curve wants to gradually turn inwards. And for this we can use a tool on Transform CV called proportional modification. So I'll choose that, which gives me a slightly different set of modes, but I'll stick with XYZ for now. But the key thing is that we get these fall-off sliders here. So the way it works is that I pick one CV as the master, and then click the arrows to add to the selection. And notice that it's jumped across the curves here. So I'll just take a look in the side view, and then when I move the master CV in the Y direction, and I'll just put my sensitivity back to 1 so we can see it better, then you'll see that the extra 9 CVs are also moved in a proportional way. So I'll just undo that and then bring it out to the right position. And now with the fall-off sliders I can design how these following CVs relate. So when the form factor is high, they lag behind the movement of the master CV, and if it's down low, then they follow more quickly. So I can just adjust that so I can get as close as I can to Mike's template. And now if I put on the curvature comb, then we can see there's a really disciplined twist to the curves. Now it won't have guaranteed the continuity here, so I'd check that and then maybe just use the Align tool after the move to get it back into line. So I've got a nice, strong, disciplined curve there. So now I'll have a look at some surfaces. So here are a couple of Mike's concept surfaces on the A-pillar. Now in practice we would start again probably and rebuild these for production surfaces. But I'm going to use them as examples for some of the other modes on the Transform CV tool. So I would typically start by using the Surface Evaluate tool to check just for position to start with. And then check that boundary and use the middle mouse button to see where the problem is. And this one's easy to fix. I just pick the CV I want to move, and then just do a normal move and a point snap. And the locator's now gone green. So then I would check for tangency. And there's an interesting quirk here of the locator, because if I now click on this to try to check for tangency, then it's still only checking position. So what I have to do is say delete locators, and then apply the new tangent check. And if I do the middle mouse button again, I can see that the problems are still in the center, which means it's this CV. So if I want to fix this by hand instead of using the Align tool, I can use the Transform CV and go back to Move. And I could use the XYZ directions, but instead I'm going to use the NUV down here. And the N is for the normal direction, and that's the one we use mostly, and it's just on the first mouse button. Now, that was way too quick. So let's change the sensitivity to maybe 50. And now that's just breathing that in and out 90 degrees to the surface. So I can achieve tangency with those small mouse movements. Now, another option I have with Move CV, and I'll just undo that last move, is to use a mode called Project. And this works on the fact that tangency requires these hulls to be in line. So if I now click on this hull, then the selected CV jumps into line. But if I keep my mouse button held down, then I can still adjust this CV along the tangent line. So that's a way of fixing tangency errors when you've got natural surface edges. Now another mode we use a lot is called Slide, and this moves CVs along the hull lines. So here you can see that the flow of CVs is skewed. So if I use Slide, then I can pick a CV and drag an arrow to move along the hull. And if I adjust these tangent CVs here, you'll see that I'm not losing the tangent continuity at the boundary, because I'm moving along the hulls and so holding the relationship. And then if I want to work with a hull line as a whole, then I can switch to picking hulls. And then I get these extra arrows that allow me to skew the hull in one go. So finally I can delete the locators and check for curvature. And actually we've got that okay. But if that had failed, then I could continue to work on these curvature CVs. So there's a lot to the Transform CV tool, and you can find some more information in 2 of the version 2012 update movies in the resources section.